Hilton Hotels is a world-renowned, award-winning hotel chain known for their first-class amenities, authentic hospitality, and top-of-the-line commitment to your comfortable stay. The name Hilton has become synonymous with hotel. But did you know about Hilton's commitment to our military and its veterans? Did you? I didn't. To be honest, before this relationship unfolded, I did not know. Through Operation Opportunity, whose motto is "Our mission is your success," Hilton Hotels has been able to hire 30,000 veterans, military spouses, and dependents since 2013 with a commitment to hire 25,000. That's right, 25,000 more by the end of 2025. Wow, wow, wow. What a commitment. To learn more about Hilton's military programs, check out Operation Opportunity at jobs.hilton.com/military. Guys, I'll be the first to tell you, staying in the hatchback, sleeping on the road, Scion TC, starving artist, that might have looked cool, cramped my style massively. I definitely appreciate having an award-winning breakfast, high-speed internet, and a comfortable bed. It makes my job so much easier with the already stressful work that these projects are. Blessed that I get to do them, but it is hard work. So I'm thankful for Hilton. I appreciate them a lot. Go check out Operation Opportunity, jobs.hilton.com/military. Check it out. Hey everybody, Tim K here, founder of the Veterans Project, founder of the Caregiver Project, and host of the Veterans Project podcast. With me on this episode of the podcast is a legend of the Vietnam War who served in the United States Army's famed 1st Cavalry Division in a position he couldn't have even imagined for himself. An OJT, or on-the-job training door gunner on a Huey gunship. Some, including Johnny, will tell you that the lifespan of a door gunner in Vietnam was right around 6 seconds. Regardless of whether or not this is the factual decided lifespan, one thing is for certain. My feelings are that Vietnam was the cauldron and the door gunner position was to be thrown into the fire under that cauldron. On top of not receiving the allotted technical flight training pre-deployment, the dangers that Johnny faced from the air varied anywhere from technical malfunctions to pilot error to enemy artillery and small arms fire. Couple that with the fact that Johnny's missions fluctuated from mop-up duty to mail carrier for the frontline troops to carrying the precious cargo of America's infantry on night and day missions, and you have an almost certain recipe for terror. The elements were constantly changing, and the enemy maintained a ferocious approach. But Hub's dedication to his duty and fierce focus from the air served him well, and he completed his time in Vietnam, only to come home to a country that was torn from within. The mere presence of Johnny served as a reminder of a tumultuous time Americans wanted to leave in the past, and it would make him feel this the instant he stepped on U.S. soil. Although we certainly did spend some time talking about combat, most of this podcast remains true to our core mission and the discussion of reintegration, something that challenged Johnny mightily for decades after the war. This podcast is important. It's the first in a series of hopefully many episodes with those who served in Vietnam, Laos, and Cambodia. And I just want to say to those men, I'm so proud of you. I'm thankful for your service, Johnny, and I'm thankful for your brothers who fought in a conflict that many ran from and many rioted against. You answered the call of your nation, even when that nation turned its back on you. We are forever in your debt. And frankly, I believe that our almost celebrity-like treatment nowadays is due to the fact that you came before us. This podcast is dedicated to all those hard chargers who endured the hellish conditions of those Vietnam jungles only to return to an ungrateful country. To those men I say, may you find peace in your hearts and souls, and realize your younger brothers of the global war on terror love you mightily. Thank you for your service, and most importantly, welcome home.
The Veterans Project is a comprehensive essay capturing the legacies of our warfighters, caregivers, and civilians who have stepped forward in defense of our patriotic principles in an effort to capture their stories and to never forget the staggering sacrifices of our nation's finest. This is the Veterans Project podcast, where our legacies are the mission. Here's your host, Tim K.
Welcome to the Veterans Project podcast. My name is Tim K, and I'm your host as always. Here with me is Johnny Hubs. It's a pleasure. It's an honor to have you here with me. And when I saw the movie Stack Deck, your film that G and Jesse did on you, just blown away by you as a man. And the emotion of it was the strongest thing about it. I mean, the emotion they really captured well. Thanks for being here, Johnny. We appreciate you.
Well, I appreciate it. Thank you for having me.
Yeah. So, Johnny, let's go back through your life a little bit and talk about how you grew up. Obviously, with this, it's an essay, so we want to talk about everything that led to joining the military and why you decided to do that. But kind of wanted to know a little bit how you grew up and where you're from.
Well, I grew up with a military family. My father was in the United States Air Force in Korea. He was stationed at Travis Air Force Base back in the 1960s. And, 1963, of course, we all know what happened in 1963 with JFK.
Right.
Was assassinated. Then my dad was stationed in England, and he asked my mother if she wanted to come with him or go to her folks living here in San Antonio, Texas.
Mm.
She decided to come here to San Antonio, Texas. And that's pretty much the way it played out.
What do you remember about growing up? What kind of led you? Because obviously you had a path that led you, into the military. What do you remember about your parents that really stuck with you? I'm sure there are a bunch of things, but what do you remember most?
Well, one thing, like I said, my dad was in the United States Air Force. He was a camera tech and a photographer. He took care of all the cameras that went on the aircraft in the Korean War. He served in the Korean War and did all that he could as a photographer and a camera tech to take care of the cameras, make sure they're all full with film before they take off on their missions. And then when they got back off their missions, he'd take the film out and develop it for review of the big shots that we're reviewing now that, where all the enemy was. So, and he took me to the dark room, so to speak, there on the Air Force Base. And I'd go visit, and I'd see what he did and all that. So it kind of rubbed off on me. I kind of an amateur photographer myself.
No, you're good. I've seen your stuff.
Yeah, thank you. I appreciate that. And, it just worked out that way. And on my mom's side, she had 5 brothers, and they all went and served during World War II.
Okay. Wow.
All 5 brothers went to war. All 5 brothers came back.
Wow. Not many families could say that.
I tell you, it was awesome. It kind of everything rubbed off.
Yeah. Do you remember them really well? Do you remember?
I do. Oh yeah. They were instrumental in me growing up. They were good uncles, great uncles, and I loved them. They all lived until their 80s, pretty much all of them.
Wow.
So,
did you ever talk with them about their experiences, or were they pretty quiet about that? Yeah.
Pretty quiet.
Yeah.
Not a 1 out of 5
That's
that they ever talk about it.
That's really interesting.
Even when I got back from Vietnam.
Wow. Just kind of quiet about it.
They were real quiet about it. So, and even my dad, he never talked about the Korean War.
Yeah. Wow. That's interesting how that goes, because experientially for me, when I've been doing the project, I've found like it takes a while for the guys to open up if they ever do, and I found that with Vietnam is, I think when I started this project about 5 years ago, I asked I had a couple references that were shot out to me on Vietnam guys, and I went to them and they immediately just told me, no. I was like, oh, I thought that they were open to talk. And I went to them and they were almost seemed insulted. And of course I didn't take it personally at all. I realized, hey, if you don't want to talk about it, I don't want you to talk about it, because, it takes a willing participant to make this work what it is. So, but there's definitely something with the Vietnam veterans, especially, I've noticed. And a lot of that is probably because your country made you feel ashamed in a lot of ways for what you did in your duty, which to me is disgusting. And it makes me sad. And this is partly why we get out here and tell these stories, so that we can make up for, all those years where we didn't. So what about them do you remember being so instrumental in your life? I know they didn't talk about the experiences, but I'm sure they were great men.
They were tight. As a family, they were all tight. They had their days, but they were proud.
Yeah.
They were proud. They were a proud Italian family.
Yeah.
They went and did their patriotic duty to serve for the United States of America in World War II. My grandfather, Joseph Tallarico, was very proud of him. And, and especially they all come back from the war. They all had different services too. One was Marines, 2 were Army, Navy. They all went to different services. So.
Yeah, lineage.
But yeah,
it's powerful. And you said your mom had a big impact on you and how much she loved veterans. Can you talk a little bit about her and what you remember of her?
Well, back when I was in the 11th grade, I decided that I wanted to serve. I wanted to serve my country. And I asked my mom, I said, would you sign for me if I was to join? And she said, well, yeah and no.
How moms do, yes and no at the same time.
So, it was, my dad was over there and I was pretty much the man of the family, so to speak, here. So, it was very important that I had her okay, because that was the only way I was going to get in the military at 17 years old. And I still didn't have a GED. I didn't finish high school. So, I was asking a lot. But I wanted to help, and I wanted to bring more money into the family, but I wanted to serve my country. That was big on me. And
still that sense of duty.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And I still have that.
Yeah.
Today, I still feel the same way.
That's powerful.
And finally, tried to get in the Air Force.
Mm-hmm.
The Air Force wouldn't take me. They didn't have a GED. I was young.
Yeah.
The Navy, same way.
The Air Force doesn't take a lot of people.
No, yeah.
They're very picky with their standards, unlike the Army.
They are. And the Army...
The Army's like, are you alive?
Yeah.
You can serve.
But actually, they said, well, you don't have a GED, so
okay.
The only way we're going to let you in is if you volunteer draft.
Okay.
Well, the draft was only 2 years instead of 3-year hitch.
Okay.
So, but I volunteered, and they took me, and August 6th, 1970, I took the oath. And never forget the oath. It never goes away. It's drilled in you and everlasting till you die. It's not going to go away.
What do you remember about that time in our country? Obviously, it was pretty tumultuous, but, you were in Texas. What was the climate like here during that time? Do you remember? I mean, I know you were young, but...
Yeah. It was just a lot going on, There's people protesting in the streets and this, that, and the other for one reason or the other. And it was, still, to me, it was like the 60s. I mean, it was 1970. I mean, come on. 1968, 1969, 70. It's still.
Yeah.
So growing up, and here we go, and I got on the plane. That's the first time I've been on a plane, and
wow,
went to Fort Leonard, Missouri to take boot camp.
Wow. And you trained up particularly to be a door gunner. Did you join for that? No,
I didn't.
Okay.
Actually, when I got in, they wanted me to be a lineman for the county. I am a lineman for the county. Well, anyway.
It's not a good podcast if we don't have the guests sing.
Singing was not my good trait.
It sounds good to me, man.
Anyway, what happened is I took the training there. I finished boot camp, and then I had to stay another 4 weeks there at Fort Leonard, Missouri. And to take that 4 weeks of lineman training. And then from the lineman training, they sent me to Fort Gordon, Georgia. And that was another, 4 weeks. So it was pretty much, I think it was 8-week training. And it was everything from stringing camo wire, working on the telephone poles, to just tying knots. You wouldn't believe how many knots they use in lineman course.
I felt like you were in the Navy for a second.
Yeah,
what am I doing
thought,
here?
Yeah, really. But then after that, they shipped me to, it was in Germany.
Okay.
It was right outside Frankfurt.
Okay.
God, I can't remember that right now. But anyway, I stayed there, and when I turned 18, I put in a 1049. I liked Germany and everything, but I wanted to go serve in Vietnam.
Wow.
It was just calling, I guess. I don't know. It was just something that I felt that, I don't know, I just wanted to.
That's amazing. Yeah, you probably felt that, the fact that there was an active combat scenario going on, there's that sense that I've got to do this, where it's like with us even, with Iraq and Afghanistan, it's like if you don't go to Iraq and Afghanistan, it's like, what were you doing during your time in service? What was that about? Why were you there? And, so I would have, buddies of mine volunteer 4, 5, 6 times because they, not only needed that rush, but they needed to feel like they were a part of something.
Exactly.
And you can be in the Army, you can be in the military, and still feel like you're not contributing enough.
Exactly.
And especially during a time of war. So I kind of understand that, I mean, even Vietnam was tough, losing a lot of guys. So that was a very serious decision you made. And you probably realized did you realize the weight of that?
Exactly. Especially when I got there.
Yeah.
You see, I don't know. First thing you do is you step off that plane and the heat hits you. Boom. It's like,
humidity's
whoa.
rough, huh?
Oh, yeah. You can definitely feel the heat.
Yeah.
Whoa, this is different. When I got there, I think it was a week, 2 weeks. You're in Cam Ranh Bay, Vietnam. Orientation, what not to do, what to do.
Yeah.
How
not to get yourself killed stupidly.
Yeah. But be aware of the girls, that kind of stuff. So,
right.
But and then, okay, well, you're going to the 1st Cavalry Division.
Wow.
So we're sending you to Benoit Air Base right now.
Okay.
And they shipped me. We flew in a C-130 transport. And I tell you what, man, you fly in a C-130, it's like, whoa. All you see is all these wiring and fluid lines and everything's showing, and it's like, whoa.
This can't be safe.
Yeah, this can't be safe. And it was I forgot how long that flight was. An hour and a half, maybe.
Yeah.
But it finally landed. Everything was cool. Yeah, knock on wood and all that good stuff. But we landed there and said, okay, you're going to be trucked over to Long Binh replacement depot. So we got to Long Binh replacement depot, and Sergeant come up to me and he said, well, you Hubs? Yes, sir, I'm Hubs. He said, well, you're a lineman. I said, yes, sir. He said, well, we don't need anybody out in the jungle stringing commo wire. But we'll give you 5 choices. And one of them happened to be door gunner. And ever since Cam Ranh Bay, when I first got there, I saw the aircraft going over. And, they were flying low level. And I'm looking up and I'm looking at these guys wearing the helmets. And they got their shield down. And, I said, man, that's what I want to do. If I can't get in the Air Force, I can, my dad would still be happy, man,
Yeah.
I'm still flying.
Right.
I still earn my wings.
Yeah, definitely.
But he said, door gunner, huh? That's what. Yeah, I'd like to do door gunner, be a door gunner. And he said, well, that's life expectancy is only about 6 seconds.
Oh, geez.
I think that's what it was.
Wow. It was rough.
And I said, well, yeah, you still want to do it? Well, yeah, I want to fly. He said, well, not only that, you get flight pay, flight pay.
Yeah.
You get hazardous pay, combat pay.
Which you deserve all those.
Yeah. So it wasn't a lot of money back then, but still, you're making a little extra there.
Right.
But one thing I found, there was no place to hide in that helicopter, and you didn't get parachutes.
No.
So
if you go down, you're probably not going to make it.
Yeah, well.
A lot of those guys were going down. Yeah.
They were.
What do you remember about stepping into that position? I mean, were there nerves when you signed up for that? Did you feel nervous about it, or was there,
No, not at all. No,
Wow.
no. It was. I can't wait. I can't wait.
Yeah.
It was a new job. See, when I was in Germany as a lineman, I got a 1970 Dodge Ram pickup, and I'd go around to all the concerns in different cities in Germany to fix all their phones and telephone lines and this, that, and the other. Well, the one thing there was not is wood poles. They were all cement poles because of the weather and the climate there. They didn't want to rot, so they made them all cement poles or metal poles. So there wasn't a lot of that anyway. So, but yeah, so it took me about 2 weeks to get flight clearance. I went to the 229th Assault Helicopter Battalion, 1st Air Cav Division, Air Mobile.
Wow.
And Benoit. And I guess it was 2 weeks, and I got my flight clearance, and they said A-OK, and gave me my flight gear, flight helmet, flight gloves, and flight uniform. And like I told Guido from Fox, I was OJTing.
Yeah, wow.
It was OJT. It was nobody ever put you in a helicopter unless you wanted to be in one.
Right.
They never did that. The Army didn't do that. They didn't want you if you didn't want to fly.
Right. Yeah. Wow. So what was it like going up there for the first time, being up in the air? Being over
it was awesome. I said, "Wow, this is gonna be great." I liked it.
Yeah.
It was. We had doors, and then we had not doors. It depends. For one thing, the doors just created more weight. Yeah. And we were a transport helicopter unit, and we transported the grunts, the infantrymen, into the jungles.
Wow.
Picked them up.
Yeah.
Resupplied them. Whatever they needed, we were there for them.
Yeah.
We never left a man in the field.
That's awesome.
We're always there for them. We're one call away, 15 minutes away, tops. So we could be out there in that jungle taking whatever they needed in a heartbeat.
Were any of those missions more tough, particularly than others? Do you remember all of them kind of, seeming together? Or did they feel seamless, or do you remember some that, maybe didn't go the way you wanted them to, or they felt more dynamic than the other ones?
Well, yeah, every mission was different. They had Ash and Trash was just so-called what they called it as taking things to the fire bases and maybe mail. Well, to me, Ash and Trash, that wasn't Ash and Trash. That was important to them guys in the field.
Right.
Man, you bring mail to them, they were...
That's morale. That's morale.
It's morale booster, big time. Or it could be Jerry John letter, and that wasn't cool either, but,
It's important either way.
Yeah, it was important either way for them to have that. So, but that's what they called it, Ash and Trash. And you had combat assaults where you take the whole unit, the whole company, maybe, 2 companies. Mainly, you take a company out and you put them in an LZ, and maybe it's just one ship LZ.
Yeah.
Where they blow an LZO, boom. Yeah. You come in there one ship at a time. That's not cool. Where's the rest of the guys at, man?
Yeah.
But sometimes it'd be 5 ships at a time, and that's a big ass LZ now.
Did you ever look at those guys and they're getting in, and just as they were, I'm getting to it. Yeah.
Very good point. When they were getting in, that was one look. When they were getting off, that was another look. But I think the one that stuck with me the most is when they got on that aircraft. That was a look you can never forget. I don't know how to explain it. I know that they're proud to get out of there, but you could see that 1,000-yard stare on their faces. Instead of smiling and being happy to get on that aircraft, there was a sad look to it. Yeah. Their eyes.
You'll probably never forget that.
Never will.
Yeah.
I don't want to.
Yeah. You don't want to. there's a strength in that. There's a solemnity and understanding. Few people understand that, unless you've gone to combat, of how important it is to keep some of those tougher memories as well, because that's evidence of the sacrifice that we make in going there and being in that service. It's a tough thing, but it's something we want to carry. We don't want others to have to carry, and I'm
right.
sure you feel the same way. You're probably proud to carry that, but wouldn't want anybody else to have to.
And if they do, I hope that they learn from us.
Yeah.
Those who are sharing their stories.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's the most important thing. So, how long were you over there for?
7.5 months.
And how often were you guys going out on missions?
I'd go out every day. Every day, I was what they call a floating door gunner.
Wow.
I flew with whatever ship, whatever helicopter.
And can you, I'm sorry to cut you off, but can you explain OJT to those that may not know it?
OJT, on-the-job training. It's...
it's the Army's way of saying we're throwing you into the fire.
Yeah, really. OJT was, you're going to learn, and it was, what can I say? I started becoming a damn good gunner. I learned real quick what not to do and what to do. My job was to take care of that aircraft and my crew, whatever way I could.
Was it hard being on the gun? Was it tough? Was it tough when you were first learning, or did you catch on pretty quickly?
No, I caught on pretty quick.
Yeah.
Lead them. If they're running, lead them.
Oh, man. I somehow knew that was coming up.
Well, especially when you're doing 90 knots up there in the air.
Yeah.
200 or 300 feet or even higher. And,
people don't think about the complexity of that shooting. It is very tough. There's a lot, just like a sniper, you got to think a lot about your lead. You got to think about, even the atmospheric, what's going on with the weather and all that. And there's a lot of humidity in Vietnam. And so obviously that impacts the rounds.
Sure.
And, you, of course, with automatic, it's a little different, but, you're dealing with, a lot of different factors, right?
Yep.
And that's all OJT, on the job training.
Yeah, thank God for tracers.
Did you go out? Did you go out at night? Did you have night missions as well?
We did. We called them Nighthawk.
Okay.
And I think it was 4 or 5 C-130 landing lights. I don't know if you're familiar with that. C-130 landing light is pretty damn bright.
Yeah.
And you stick about 4 or 5 of them, and it's on a tray here. When you flip the switch on that, I think it's 24 volt.
Okay.
Whoa. And it lights up the night.
Did you like any missions more in particular? Did you enjoy?
I like Nighthawk.
Yeah, did you? Yeah.
NBA and VC always said that they own the night. Bullshit,
Yeah.
Not really.
Yeah. We own the technology.
Yeah.
They that's one thing they didn't have too much of, as much as we did. Really, right? The technology just wasn't there as much as it was for us. We're always the most tech forward, which is good.
Exactly, yeah.
Which is good at nighttime.
And a lot of it was learn as you go. These tech guys, and armor, them guys, boy, they come up with a lot of improvised things that they would do and weld this and that. Man, they did a lot of good stuff to help us guys up there flying. So, it was all learning for us. Like I said, the mission, I volunteered for every mission that helicopter needed the 4th crew member or second door gunner. And therefore, I got to fly a hell of a lot. I think I got, 480 hours in 7.5 months flying. And I enjoyed the hell out of it. I wouldn't trade flying for any job in the military. I loved it.
And you were pretty fortunate to be over there and get out unscathed. I mean, that's rare.
Yeah.
Yeah. Where were you guys at in particular in Vietnam? Were you just rolling all around the countryside, or
no?
We were sector.
At that time, in the 70s, we were in 3 Corps, Benoit Army Base, and the 1st Cav Air Mobile was right there, and there was a bunch of other units that were attached to us, and a 3rd Brigade, separate. because, a lot of the cab, they left in the 1970s, and they left behind the 3rd Brigade separate. And what they created was the Task Force Gary Owens. We had a lot of different units attached to Gary Owens. We had the largest AO in the Army to patrol. It was 3,500 square miles to patrol. And we still had American infantry grunts out in the field, certain areas, but not so far out. And still, there was a lot of AO to patrol. It is. So, but shit really hit the fan in 72. March of 30th, 1972, it all hit the fan. I forgot how many brigades NBA, hardcore Army came across them borders. And tanks, anti-aircraft. I mean, man, we never seen anything like that.
Did you notice a change in the dynamic while you were there during your time?
Yeah, very much so. At one point, they wanted us to wear a gas mask. Well, you should have seen the pilots trying to fly with a damn gas mask on. It was not a good thing, but they were afraid the gas was going to be used, and that would you're talking about pilots that need their eyes and door gunners that need their eyes. That ain't going to work. We'd be crashing against each other, crashing into one another, but that only lasted for one day. And the gas mask went out the doors.
Yeah.
That wasn't going to work.
No more of
that. It got pretty hectic. We had the hybrid, which flies, anywhere from 35 to 5,000 feet above everybody of the flight. That flight could be 5, 10, 20 helicopters at a time. What they're doing is up there monitoring everything and making sure everything's running correctly and what they can do to make things better for the flight. So our colonel, one of the colonels got shot. Anti-aircraft, 51 caliber. It was radar controlled and came up through the bubble of the right seat, I think it was. And there's a pull butt plate. I can't remember what the hell. But anyway, it ricocheted off of that and ricocheted back at him. And while he was flying and hit him in the wrist. So that was bad. So the next thing on the radio was the colonel's been hit, go down low level. So the flight was, I don't think we were 3,000 feet. What we were doing is picking up South Vietnamese. We were picking up the South Vietnamese and transporting them to a place called An Loc. An Loc was the main place that everybody was going, because that was where all the NBA and South Vietnamese the BC were trying to take over. Well, actually, they were taking over every place. I mean, that 1972, they were all over Vietnam. It was a big push, take over South Vietnam. But we're not worried about what's going on over there in 2 Corps, or 1 Corps, I Corps. Warren was worried about what's going on in our 3 Corps, and it was pretty because it was pretty dangerous stuff going on there. So they made us go low level, and we were picking up sorties, one right after the other. Boom. We're taking them to a soccer field in the middle of An Loc, and it got pretty hairy. I remember at one point, once we drop them off, and this is all low level. You're coming in. You're the jungle floor canopy is anywhere from 75 to 100 feet. Tree lines, So you're flying 100 feet, 125 feet above these trees. You're right over the canopy. It's pretty hard for the enemy to lock onto you because they can hear you, but by the time you haul ass past over them, they can't really lock in on you.
You're below that radar level,
the radar is no use for them. I remember we had just dropped off some sorties coming out of the LZ. We were flying low level to go pick up more, looked down, and there was a tank, and they were doing like this coming at us. They're turning the Turek, I think. What was it? T-54 tanks.
Okay.
And they were
like Soviet.
Yeah. They were Soviet made.
Yeah.
Of course, China and Russia is giving them all this down to fight Americans.
Yeah. People don't remember how real that, communism was, how much of a
yeah.
effort that was, and how much there was going on, from the Russian and Chinese side, with China even importing fighters, into the areas. A lot of people don't realize that. There was a lot of that going on, and very few, I think nowadays, now that, we're kind of so far removed from it all, we forget the real threat of that, and the existence of that. So it's easy to question, moves made back then from, kind of our glass houses now, but communism was a very real threat.
Yes.
And you remember.
Yeah.
And
It was. And you know what? What really is sad is to see that anybody would want that in America. And, all you got to do is look around and listen. And if it ain't socialism, it's communism they want to start in this country. Not going to happen. There's a lot of veterans, and not just Vietnam veterans. There's a lot of veterans in this country that would not let that happen in the United States of America. Wake up, honey. It ain't going to happen. So,
especially not here in Texas.
No. Not as long as we're breathing, it ain't going to happen.
Yeah.
Especially in Texas. We're still a republic, remember that.
We like to remind people.
Yeah, exactly.
So, what was the feeling for you? You're a young door gunner. You're probably not thinking about the political implications too much of what you're doing, but how did you feel like we were winning the war? Did you feel like things were going well? How did you feel, or did you even think about that when you were up there? Was it just mission first and do what you have to do?
Yeah. That was our primary mission. Our mission was take care of the guys in the field. And those guys in the jungle was the number one mission. That's the only reason we were in the air, is for those guys. And we were flying above the best, and the best was down there.
At what point were you pretty comfortable the whole time that you were there? Did you feel pretty comfortable in there? By the time I bet you get to closer to month 7, you've probably developed a pretty good routine, and you were pretty used to.
Until that April of 72 and Anlock, and you were talking about a lot of brigades of NVA coming across that border. You're talking 22,000 NVA hardcore regulars coming across there with everything they got. I mean, you're talking about anti-aircraft guns, 37 millimeters. You're talking about tanks, and there are 2 different types of tanks and tracks, and everybody was helping out. The Air Force was there. They were coming in and bombing runs, and we had our helicopter gunships, AH-1s, gunships coming in, Cobras. They were coming in and doing their numbers. In fact, they were the ones that took out the first tanks, was the helicopter Cobra gunship. They had the tank killers, some rounds that they started using, and boom, boom, boom. They started taking tanks out. What they were finding was the NVA was chaining their men to the tanks, the drivers, so they couldn't run away.
Wow.
They couldn't go AWOL. They were chaining them to the tanks. Yeah. So they
if you want to know who's on the good side, you only have to take a look at we don't chain our men to tanks.
We don't chain them. Yeah. God, man.
We might push you to serve, but we're not chaining you to our tanks.
That was
wow,
pretty awesome stuff when I heard that now. But it's
the lack of respect for human life in something like that, and amongst those who are seeking an ideology as their main means of life, communism. You see that chaining men to tanks to make them stick into battle.
That's it.
To make them have that pride.
Yeah.
Is incredible. Chaining men to tanks, just treating them with such little regard for human life is just disgusting. I mean, I can't imagine, but you saw that firsthand being over there.
It was what the ones on the ground
were telling you.
Yeah, and working their way up to us, and they're flying over it. So.
Right. Yeah, but you knew that was going on. You knew the treatment of how communism was impacting.
Sure, it was whatever at all costs. Well, they just want to win. That's their main goal, is to.
And they'll do anything with it. Women and children.
Of course.
Yeah. I think a lot about this with guerrilla warfare because we face a lot of that type of, war, which there's nothing inherently wrong with guerrilla. It's just when it starts to involve women and children that it becomes really
Of course.
a problem. But you notice that a lot in Afghanistan with these ideologies, Iraq,
Wow.
that same kind of thing with, religious fervor being so hot that you'll involve women and children. And, that was going on in Vietnam, and we really learned from you in a lot of our tactics, and how we handle
That's awesome.
things.
Yeah.
Because that type of warfare was becoming prevalent then. It was a type of war we had never really fought. And so for you guys, what do you think your greatest lessons were, during your time as a door gunner being over there? And it doesn't have to be on a grand political scale, it could be anything, just day to day.
It was, I don't know. We were just, it was a day by day learning experience, I guess, for a lot of us, and like I said earlier, you were talking about improvising this, that, and the other and making things work better for us in the field or in the air. So, yeah, we learn a lot.
Yeah.
And if you don't learn anything from the past,
you're doomed to repeat it.
It gets repeated.
Right.
And you're going down the wrong road if you don't learn.
Yeah, right.
It's,
Yeah. Yeah, so, you wrapped up, you were over there for 7 months, you said.
7.5.
Yeah, 7.5. When you got back to the States, what was that? What was it like for you being back here? This is a deep question.
Yeah. I remember coming back and landing in San Francisco.
Oh, wow. So you landed right in the heat.
Right in the heat of it. Yeah, they were there protesting. And, I don't like to say that, they spit on me. You hear a lot of that, well, it never happened.
Mm-hmm.
People say, well, that never happened. And bullshit, it happened.
Yeah.
And, I remember having a protester come up to me and doing his thing and me getting all teed off. I'm in uniform, so there really ain't a damn thing I can do. I'm in the city of the all-night generator is what we called it.
Yeah.
When we got home, that's what we called it. Going to the city of the all-night generator. And, it got to the point where I was so pissed off. And all of a sudden, this person's hand went over my shoulder. And I looked around. Well, it was the United States Marine. He said, let's go, man.
Yeah.
Come on. It ain't worth it, man.
Yeah.
It's not worth it at all, bro.
Mm-hmm.
So we walked our way. And I said, where you going, man? He said, well, I'm going to Dallas. I said, well, so am I, man. So the next thing you know, we're checking in. And we were on, what they call it. You're on a flight, but you're not on a flight.
Like
you're
a hop?
Yeah, I can't remember what the hell you call it now. I'm lost for words here.
It's okay.
You standby. I'm sorry.
Standby. Yeah.
Standby, yeah. So we're on standby. So, okay, we got aboard this Delta flight, and we're on standby. And said, okay, well, you can go on this flight. So we get on board, and, of course, we're way in the back of the aircraft. And they're loading and doing their bit, and we're back there talking and everything. And all of a sudden, one of the stewardess come back, said, you need to follow me. Said, we're going to get bumped, man. We're going to have to wait for another flight.
Yeah.
So she gets up there, and she said, well, this is your seats. It's first class.
Wow.
I said,
wow.
She says, the captain wanted you guys to have this first class seats.
Wow.
Well, that was awesome. I mean.
Not expecting that after the treatment in the airport.
No, not expecting it at all.
Yeah.
So it was pretty awesome. We sit down. Of course, we were just flabbergasted by all this. And it blew us away.
Yeah.
So, and here we go, man. We're just talking about Nam and Sid and doing our thing. And the flight went pretty quick. And then we get to Dallas, and so, this is where I'm getting off, man. I said, well, I'm going to San Antonio. So, but hey, nice talking with you, man, and have a good life. It's, that was the way it was. Nobody kept contact with one another, Why didn't we take each other's phone numbers and addresses and stay in contact with one another? It was like in Vietnam. Well, see, not to get off the subject here, but when I was in Vietnam, I went to find out where I'm flying with, who I'm flying with that day, or what aircraft I'm going to fly with. They said, "You're not flying today, Hubs." Well, why is that? Because you're going home. Oh, whoa, okay. So I'm not going to be able to say bye to anybody.
Wow.
They're already in the air. Just pack your shit and go.
Yeah.
That was it.
Was that hard?
It was very hard.
I mean, losing that all of a sudden.
It was.
That's unheard of nowadays. Yeah. It wouldn't happen.
I couldn't. Yeah. Didn't have anybody's. Hey, you sure the hell didn't have anybody's email address or phone numbers, for that matter. I mean, or addresses.
Right. We
just never, figured that would happen that way. You just never, you worried about one day at a time.
Right, yeah.
You never know what the next day is going to bring. You'd be here today and gone tomorrow.
Yeah.
That fast. You know that.
Well, I mean, you're talking about, they were talking to you about being a door gunner and having a 6-second lifespan, when you get there. And then and you make it through a tour.
Yeah. Not going to win,
Yeah.
Thank God.
Did the weight of that hit you when you were going home? Realizing like, hey,
it did. I didn't want to go. I wanted to stay there with my friends. I mean, I still had an oath there. I still had a job to do.
Yeah.
Why? I didn't want to go home, but I was thinking because of my MOS that I was a lineman. Yeah. So, for the county, that I was going home because I wasn't actually, I don't know how to explain it, but yeah, that's what I thought.
Yeah.
But it wasn't, because I was awarded the MOS door gunner 67A1F, and after 6 months, the Army awards you your MOS if you work in that MOS over 6 months.
Yeah,
and I did. So
awesome.
I was awarded that. We didn't have a combat infantry badge that we earned or anything like that, like the grunts or infantry would wear.
Yeah.
The wings were very important to me, and I did earn those. And even though it's not, per se, a combat ribbon, I was still proud of them. In the 7.5 months there, I earned 12 air medals. I earned one for valor, the V device, and earned the Bronze Star.
What was that particular action for? Did you?
That action was for directing my fire to the enemy below the tanks, to be exact. That day, this was April 6th, April 7th of 72.
Okay,
it was pretty hot and heavy there.
Yeah.
So
that's when you're dealing with that big NVA insurgency.
Exactly. Yeah, there were thousands and thousands, 22,000.
Jeez.
That's just from one.
There was such a massive force there.
Oh, yeah. Massive. Yeah.
Do you think we were prepared for that? Do you think we were ready?
It was kind of lax there towards the end of the war. Everybody wanted to go home. To be exact, there was only 92,000 Americans left in the Vietnam War during that time.
Yeah.
That's it.
Just wasn't enough.
Yeah. Well, yeah. You're talking about in all corps. You're talking about the whole country. And that's why, we were Vietnamizing the war, letting them fight their own battles.
Yeah.
Let them fight the war. We're going to back our butts out of there and go home.
How did you deal with, the transition of coming home? How was that for you? You talked about, one of the things that you mentioned a minute ago about that Marine in the airport and, getting on the plane with him and not speaking to him after. I think that's one aspect that you guys really had a tough time with, was there was a real lack of community when you came back, right?
Yeah, it wasn't so much on the favor of us, though.
Right.
It was pretty much against the war, and even the Americans in this country that were veterans, they weren't so much in love with us Vietnam veterans.
Yeah. What was that like, the World War II guys, and how did they treat you?
Some of them, they and God bless them, but some of them looked at us as, we didn't fight a war. It was a police action. That's not a war.
Wow.
And this was years and years later at the VFW out here one time.
Oh, wow.
They said something to that effect, and I said to him, Commander, we bled the same way as you did. Our color of the blood is the same as you. And them bullets were firing at us too.
Yeah.
So don't go there with me. So, that's just,
Yeah, it's an interesting dynamic, though. A lot of people don't think about that. A lot of people think there would be, rampant support from all veterans, especially the World War II guys. But it was some, and some didn't. Some had a really difficult time with, supporting you guys.
Even the Korean War veterans, see, they got shafted too.
Yeah.
It was a short war.
The forgotten war.
Yeah, it was a forgotten war. They got the short end of the stick, to be honest with you. And God bless them. I've never had a Korean War veteran ever say anything to me about serving in Vietnam.
Yeah.
They look to us as, you're the same as us, man.
But they probably see a lot of that in
they-
the lack of, in the lack of real political support, the lack of politicians understanding. It was the same for Korea. Like, you got to go in all guns blazing or not go at all. It's simple as that.
Exactly.
And when you're not offered that kind of support, those Korean War veterans felt that. I mean, lack of food, lack of equipment,
Exactly.
freezing in the valleys, not having the support, the heating elements. I mean, you're talking about, we went into World War II, we geared up as a country.
Yeah.
And then Korea and Vietnam were kind of just like, all right, let's send some guys over there and fix this thing. I can't do that. It doesn't work that way. And the lack of political support was just, and understanding. You talked about some of the command elements like gas masks and things like that in helicopters. Any common sense guy who's in a helicopter knows that's not going to work, but they're not listening to the men on the ground.
No. Or in the air.
Or in the air.
No kidding. I have a uncle. He's the only uncle I have, living uncle, on my dad's side. It was my dad's brother, and he fought in the Korean War. Now, he was in the Army. Like I said earlier, my dad was in the United States Air Force.
Right.
Well, they got together. Somehow they got to be able to see one another and got together to spend a couple days together. And then my uncle, Uncle Vincent, my Uncle Vince, he don't like talking about it much, but when he does, it's going to be with me or somebody who's been there.
Right.
And he's a great guy.
Yeah.
But man, he don't like talking about it. It's very hard for him to talk about what he's been through.
Mm.
And he was a grunt. He was on the ground. He was infantry. It was bad times there, man. So.
Why do you think the climate was the way it was when you got back? What do you think led to that? And how did you feel about it?
Well, it sucked, really.
Yeah.
But it was going on in the 60s. It was going on. It was going on all the way until 72 when I got back. So It was still going on. It wasn't pretty. It wasn't pretty for us. They told us, don't wear uniforms home.
Wow.
Well, of course I did. That's all I had. I didn't have no civilian clothes to wear. Yeah. I had to wear it, especially if you're flying for the government and you're flying under orders.
Right, TDY.
You got to wear your uniform.
Right.
So it was it was no choice. You got to wear a uniform.
Right.
They got back and, you think, wow, I feel good, about serving. You get go to hell looks and people talking shit behind your backs or to your face, it's sad.
Yeah.
Took off that uniform, started doing my thing, and one job to the next. And man, it just wasn't easy. Nobody gave a shit.
Yeah.
Nobody cared about what we did, what I did. I'm not asking you to jump over and give me a hug, but my God, don't make me feel like I didn't do anything for my country. I'm proud of what I did for my country. Don't make me feel like shit.
How did you, you talked about bouncing from jobs and stuff and, having a difficult time focusing. And, was that because of, your role as a door gunner? Was that because of your time in the military? Do you think a lot of that impacted you over there?
I think majority of it was when my own countrymen treated me like shit.
Yeah.
That's where the shit hit the fan for me.
Yeah. Yeah.
Sure. Hey, okay, Vietnam's bad. I wanted to go. That's what they tell me. Yeah, well, you volunteered to go. It's your own fault. Whatever, But I can deal with it.
Right.
But I cannot deal with my own countrymen treating me and my fellow countrymen and veterans like we didn't do nothing. Mm-hmm. That's bullshit. I mean, God dang, I just don't know what to say. It's like, come on, man.
Yeah, you did all you could. You did what you were supposed to do. Duty.
Hey, we fought for your freedoms and your freedom and your freedom and your freedoms.
Mm-hmm.
And then they talk about their freedoms are being denied. Really?
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay, well, that's your right. We fought for your freedom.
Mm-hmm.
Exactly. But don't misuse mine. Don't take mine and stomp on them. Don't stomp on my American flag. Don't stomp on my rights. And we'll get it on just fine.
Yeah. Yeah. Not very many people seem to get that nowadays. It's
No,
like
they don't.
when
No,
you're
no.
and we've got plenty that do, and that I'm very proud of, and we got a lot of followers on the project that get it. But it takes education, a lot of that. And like I was telling you earlier, I have all the respect in the world if you don't have my political ideologies. If you respect our service members and you respect the jobs that they did, you don't even have to love the war. If you respect us and what we did, that's what it's all about. If you're educated, we give you the education through storytelling, through legacies. We tell you the stories and you still don't respect it, then that's when I got no use for you. You know? And that's when we've got a problem.
Yeah.
And, that problem gets scary.
It does get scary.
Yeah.
It's scary right now today. Yeah. It's pretty sad, but, this country ain't going down without a fight.
Yeah, certainly not.
That's a fact.
Yeah. We're kind of on the live feed right now, and Becca, she just said she wanted to say to you, as for me and my house, we thank you. We care always. You got people that, you got people out there.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
It's important, and I think that, when you came back, the climate was so hot and tumultuous that people don't really understand that unless they were there, and you were in the middle of it. And so what was that like for you, the mental struggle, going between jobs and, not being able to focus on those things? How tough was that?
It was very tough. It's almost like, man, I don't know how to explain it. It was pretty rough, but I had over 80 jobs since I got back from Vietnam.
80 jobs?
80 jobs.
Wow.
I never could hold one job. It was pretty bad. It was almost like the pat on the back kind of stuff. I don't need no pat on the back. If I work my butt off for you and you pay me for what I'm worth, I don't want a pat on the back. And I don't want you jumping my ass. Tell me what needs to be done, and I'll do it. I could never find that right person, the owner of a job or whatever that I was with, to treat me that way.
Yeah.
And then I met a man called Curly Johnson. He was from San Antonio. They're still from San Antonio. He had a plumbing company called Mr. Rooter.
Okay. Yeah.
Heard of it. So I worked for him for 6 years, and that was a long time for me. He was a great guy. He knew how to treat his people, and I worked hard. And man, even night shifts. I had to put a little. Carry a little beeper, what a beeper is, right?
Oh yeah,
no cell phones around here,
right.
man.
Yeah.
So I had a little beeper, and I was 24/7, man. And just doing my bit. So then I did line work, climbing telephone poles. Here we are, lineman for the county again. Yeah. So it was awesome to do that. I did that for 3 years. We built most of San Antonio. Cable TV.
Wow.
Running through backyards and climbing the next pole and, doing the number there. So, but 80 jobs is a hell of a lot of jobs when you realize one person stays in one job for 30 years. You go, wow, John. So, yeah, it was, I'm sad about that part, but I wasn't happy. And if you're not happy with one job, then move on. Go to the next job until you find your happiness or find your following or your passion. Your passion in life. Yeah, so.
What's interesting to me is, you were so rooted in, service and doing what you did and becoming a door gunner and flying all those missions in Vietnam. and having such an importance in your job, and then you come back in one of the greatest sacrifices you can make in signing up for that service and for volunteering on all those missions, and then you come back and people are ungrateful for that. That's got to just destroy your confidence.
It did. I had to find myself. And I guess not too long ago, I wanted to get back to my community. So I joined the MSD, Memorial Service Detachment, Fort Sam Houston National Cemetery.
Wow.
And I put in 10 years as a rifleman,
Wow.
as a driver, as a bugler. Electronic bugler, but still, nevertheless, I served with them because I wanted to give back to my veterans, brothers and sisters that lost their lives, died after service. They're still veterans, and they deserve full military honors, and that's what we did. We gave them full military honors, and that's the 3-round volleys from 7 rifles and the sounding of taps. That's a full military honor.
Mm-hmm. The chills you get is
every day. I got
unexplainable.
Yeah, I served once a week, every Tuesday for 10 years. I was even the webmaster. I built the website for him.
Wow,
sure did.
You found some purpose within this.
Yeah, I did. I did. See, and that's I was giving back, but I was getting back.
Yeah.
And that's what it was all about.
Isn't that amazing how that selflessness gives you your greatest joy? Stepping into a position like that.
It was.
Yeah.
What was really amazing was when I met my wife.
Yeah.
Karen.
Oh, I got to talk about Karen.
Yeah, I got to talk about Karen.
Karen's in the room with us. She's probably turning 50 Shades of Red right now, but that's okay.
She is.
Yeah.
She's a great woman, and she's always got my back. And I remember the first time that she got me a computer. You're talking about Windows 95.
I remember the day.
Yeah. And it was something else. Windows 95. Hell, I thought I was doing pretty good, man. You're learning this computer stuff. Then I built my website for my military unit guys.
Wow.
229th Assault Helicopter Battalion. Built the website for them. It's been online since 98, 97, 98. It's been online. It's brought together a lot of us served with the unit. It brought a lot of the pilots and door gunners together that haven't seen one another since the war. It's brought guys together that worked on the aircraft, the cooks, clerks, everybody. I mean, everybody, there it is, man.
Yeah.
Because I did a search back in 97 or so, and I didn't find anything about us.
Wow.
No. And we were one of the most highly decorated Army aviation units to be sent to the Vietnam War.
Yeah.
Fact.
I believe it. You're talking about First Cav. You're talking about
First
lineage.
Cav,
yeah.
Yes. The
Real
229th was definitely many awards.
Yeah. And much sacrifice.
Much sacrifice.
Yeah. So, all the difficulty you had, and you kind of found some sense of community in that, and then meeting Karen, how important has your wife been to your mental health now and having someone there for you?
Very much.
Yeah.
It's I couldn't believe what it would be like without her.
Yeah.
Because she's my crutch.
Yeah.
And if I need to lean on someone and I'm really having some hard times, she's there. And that's important to know that she always is.
If you could, we had somebody else comment, and C. Alex Wolfe, he said, "Thank you for your service. Although I'm not from the U.S., I've been out in the field with U.S. Marines, and the support I've received from them has been amazing. What saddens me is how the government treats vets. And, I think it's gotten way better for us." You want to talk about that? You want to talk about how the government treated guys, you guys.
But then again, it seems like maybe they're learning something.
Yeah.
Or maybe the people are griping enough to where, come on, wake up. What are you doing? You can't do this to your veterans any longer. You send them to fight a war and you come back. They come back and then you treat them like bull.
Yeah.
Can't do that anymore, man. You can't do that. And then you want to, I'm not going to name names, but you want to take the veterans, what they deserve, what they fought for, their rights and their freedoms and their benefits. Why would you want to take that away from them?
Yeah.
They earned that. But yet you can give someone who's coming across the border who's not even an American, and I'm not talking about just from Mexico. I'm talking about everybody that comes across that border illegally. But yet you want to give them this and give them that. But yet we got homeless veterans out on the streets that are cold, hungry. They don't have a place to stay.
And a lot of guys from your era.
Yeah, a lot of them.
Yeah.
In Korea, they're a little older, but still. Nevertheless, they're still out there,
Right.
and they still need help.
Yeah.
And I just can't see that. I just,
And you felt a little bit about that. You felt a little bit of that. 80 jobs in all that time. Bouncing from one thing to the next.
Yeah,
It would probably be easy to go down that hole, right?
Yeah, sure enough.
I mean,
if it wouldn't have been from my mother, and my mother and my father separated, so it was just my mother and my sister and I. And if it wouldn't have been for her, I would have been on the streets.
Yeah.
There are a lot of times where I was out of job, going to the next job, whatever. I needed that help.
Yeah.
And she was there.
That's amazing, the separation there, in those positions. I had it too. I had that support system there. But if you don't have that support system, it's so easy to get sucked into that cycle. And I'm speaking to an older brother here, a Vietnam veteran. But we have that same, transitional issue. If there's no network, if there's no community, if there's no support system, then how do you make the transition? How do you reintegrate back into society?
It's hard to do.
Yeah. Especially when
it's almost impossible.
Almost impossible.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You're serving in a very structured environment,
Sure.
and you've got that structure. It's a government job in a way. You've got that structure there. You've got the food. You've got the schedule. You got everything set out for you. You just do your job. It's your duty, and you're sent into these challenging environments, and then you come back, and it's like going 100 miles an hour to all of a sudden just stop, and then hey, go get a job, or
makes me wonder what changed there.
Yeah.
'Cause that never happened. In a million years did that ever happen when the World War II veterans came home.
Yeah.
That never happened. And don't let them say that, it did. It never happened to them. There's no way in hell it happened to them. But what changed after that? That's where it got worse.
Yeah.
For the veterans coming home from other wars.
What do you think about that? You may not have the answer, but what do you think changed? What do you think changed between World War II and in Vietnam, in the country?
If I knew that,
yeah,
no,
you would have been able to figure it out.
Yeah.
Yeah.
If I knew that, yeah, but I'm not sure.
Yeah,
I'm not sure what happened,
and
I can't really give you an answer. I'd like to.
I know you would. What would you say to civilians if you could say something to a civilian maybe from that era to kind of dispose of the myths and stereotypes that they thought about you guys? What would you say to them?
Don't be afraid of us.
Yeah.
We're just like you.
Mm.
We just did a job that others didn't want to do. But we still love you.
Yeah.
We love our country.
We love you more than anybody else does. I feel that love.
Yeah.
I felt that empathy when I was over there, I'm sure you felt that.
Yeah.
You felt that sense of duty. Where did that sense of duty come from?
Within. Yeah.
Empathy.
I guess.
Kind of lacking in a lot of ways.
Yeah.
Nowadays.
Yeah. It was within.
Yeah.
I guess you got to feel it. Or bred into.
Yeah.
One of
It's
the
hard
two.
to teach.
Yeah.
It's hard to teach.
Yeah. But here we go again. If we can learn from our mistakes, we'll be better off as a society, as a country. If more people learn from their mistakes or our mistakes, it would be a better country. Not saying that our country sucks. I'm saying,
we still
it
live
would
in the
be a
best
lot
one.
better.
Yeah. We got our imperfections. But we're still the best place on the planet.
It's just if a hell of a lot more people appreciated this country, we'd be a lot better off. There's too many people in this country hate it. That's not right. That's not a way to go. If we keep going down that road, it's going to be sad. Sad times.
I've wondered about, there's almost something about an ease in the way of life and how easy it is nowadays that kind of breeds complacency. And I think that complacency breeds a lot of issues that we haven't had before, with complaining and not realizing what you have because you don't have that struggle. Like the Great Depression, like that bred some of our greatest warriors, that struggle was not there. It didn't really exist.
Exactly.
And then all of a sudden you have some, you have an easier time, and, you've got your phone right in front of you. You got all the technology in the world surrounding you. And we
got Mama's basement.
Probably my favorite saying from you today. You've had a lot of them, but that was a good one. Mama's basement. You've got a fallback plan every which way.
Yeah.
Gives you a lot of time to complain.
Yeah, exactly.
Johnny, what do you think going forward really brought you kind of out of some of those, darker places? What were the things that helped you, the most? I know that's could be a long form question.
Yeah,
we could write a book together.
Yeah. You not have to really think about that one. That
we got all the time in the world, man.
Yeah. I don't know, man. It's just being happy in your life and your family and your dogs. We got 6, so that's our family.
Yeah.
We have no kids, so and we live out in the country because we like it out here. We like the beautiful mountains, and it's quiet out here. But that's got a lot to do with your sanity. Mm-hmm. And
do you think time has helped in seeing the attitude change too? Because you probably see a lot more gratefulness for veterans nowadays. Of course,
it has changed.
Has that helped you?
Oh, yeah.
Or does that make you kind of bitter about how you got treated? Back then.
No, I'm past that point. Okay, I'm past that point. What I do see is I don't want to let it happen to any of the other ones. Whatever wars we fight again, let that happen to them. Yeah. I don't want to have anything to do or see anybody treat our veterans the way we were treated. Okay, I'm past that point. And but I think the country has woken up about that. Yeah. It's not been easy, but I have a lot of people come up to me and thank me for my service. I do wear my veteran's cap a lot. I wear a T-shirt now and then, You
should, yeah.
Yeah, so
I always thank the Vietnam guys, man. Even more so than any other guys. When I see a Vietnam veteran hat on, I am always quick to go up to them because I realize they didn't have it for so long.
I do it for others from the other wars, and it's almost like they're not used to it. Yeah. They really aren't.
Yeah.
I had a Korean veteran. I went up and I said, "Thank you for your service." He really didn't know what to say. I mean, he really didn't.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it's sad. Maybe there's not enough people thanking them. I don't know.
What would you say to a civilian that has trouble with that, asking that, or saying that to a veteran? Because, a lot of civilians want to, I think. They just feel intimidated.
Oh, don't let that stop you.
Yeah.
If you feel that you want to thank that person for their service, by all means, thank them. You'll make him feel a lot, or her, a lot better if you do. And you know what? You'll feel good that you did. Yeah.
And just know that if, they handle it awkwardly or, they're not quite sure what to say, that it's probably because you put them in a good place. They're like, whoa, I don't know how to handle this. That's
exactly.
That's difficult. When you're not thanked very often, you kind of, it's like, well, I appreciate that. Like I had one of the World War II Iwo Jima veterans say to me, I said, how do you respond to that when somebody says that to you? And I say, I tell them, it was a privilege that I got to fight for my country.
Sure.
I was like, wow. So now I say that because I thought, you know what, that's really good. And I am very proud that I fought. I'm very proud that I went to Iraq.
Oh, yeah.
And why shouldn't I be?
Oh, yeah.
And you can't make me not feel good about that. I'm proud that I served the Brotherhood amongst all else. My brother's overseas. And, I think that, we can all learn from that Iwo Jima veteran statement. It's very powerful. Moving forward, what do you enjoy the most now? What gives you the most joy in life now in where you're currently at in life?
Every day.
Yeah.
Every day.
Just being alive.
Just being alive. Every day that I wake up and I take a breath. And when I go to bed at night, I thank God for one more day. Every night.
Wow. Without
fail, if I can help it. And then, I thank God for that beautiful lady. My wife is
that's a big help.
She's always been there for me, man. I thank God.
That's awesome.
I just I don't know how to really answer that one.
Yeah, that's a tough one.
I'm very happy, with my life. Sure, I have my days. And I'm sad, depressed, and I wake up the next day, and maybe it's a little bit better.
Yeah.
Or maybe it's a hell of a lot better. But that's the joy of
just living day to day.
Living day by day.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What would you say to your brothers if, you had some of those guys sitting around you, those men who you served with overseas, that great fraternal bond? What would you say to those men?
Welcome home. Welcome home and talk about it, man. Come on, share it with your brothers.
How long did it take you? Did it take you a while? You feel comfortable with it?
Yeah. Well, I don't know. It wasn't till about the 1980s, about 1985 to be exact, where we started coming out in San Antonio wearing our veteran caps or OX military uniforms, whatever. Just and to get out and be part of something. And we got together in San Antonio and started a group called Alamoria Vietnam Veterans.
I've heard of that.
And that started it all for us.
Wow.
And we were part of that. And we were part of actually raising money for the statue and memorial of Hill 881 South in San Antonio. We're a big part of that. In fact, my name's underneath that memorial.
Really? Wow.
We all put our names on a piece of paper and up underneath there.
That's awesome.
Like it's going to be moved anytime.
May never see it, but it's there. Yeah.
You never know. So, but that's we all got together and I guess that's what started it. So
it's interesting to me to think about a dynamic in San Antonio where it wasn't always positive either. That's weird to think about. Military City is a USA. Still having a little bit of a struggle here with that.
A little bit.
Yeah.
Being with the honor guard there at Fort Sam Houston National Cemetery, it was, every year, Veterans Day and Memorial Day, they'd always get together and they'd always have a service for that day and to honor the veterans. It seemed like the same 250 people showed up. I mean, come on, you're talking about a military city. Wake up. Come on, let's go.
Yeah.
Look at all the bases you have here.
Yeah, that's interesting.
Yeah, it is. I don't know. I can never understand that.
What are your greatest goals moving forward? How do you want people to remember Johnny Hubbs? We talk about legacy a lot on this podcast, and legacy is a massive one because at the end of the day, really what we have are the memories, and that's what we put into history, and that's what we give to our future generations. If we don't properly capture that, I think about it all the time with these massive battles and wars caught and shown through History Channel and all that, but it can be very, you have to tell it from the individual side. You have to talk about the individual who was there in that space in time from their mouth. And that's why, we're so big on that with the Veterans Project is, taking your words, putting them out there so people can know what the actual experience was like, So we talk about legacy all the time. What for you do you want to be remembered as your legacy?
That I was a proud veteran. I was proud to serve my country. I love my country. And I would never change anything other than just being proud of your veterans that serve this country to keep it safe. So you can be safe at night with your families and go to sleep without worrying about the battles that they've seen. They don't want to have that happen here in the ESA. So if we can go to battle and fight for the freedoms that you have today, respect that. Just remember that the veterans that served this country. That's all. I'm proud of what I did. Nobody can ever take that away. No matter how bad you are to me, how you treat me, you can never take what I learned and what I did for this country away.
Very true.
Because I won't let you anyway.
Doesn't strike me as a safe move.
Yeah.
It's the truth, man.
Yeah, it is.
I'll be right here with you fighting.
Yeah, brother.
So when you think about reintegration, a lot of guys struggle with reintegration even now. Iraq and Afghanistan. What would you say to those that are struggling? I know every individual's trial is different, obviously. What would you say to them about what you learned from coming back? If you could teach them a lesson off of that, you obviously struggled. You had 80 jobs. You went back and forth between school and not school. What would you tell them about learning and what they should do and coming back in space?
Never give up. Never give in, and don't take your own life. It's not worth it. We want you here. We love to have you here, and please don't take it away, because there's people that love you. And if you take your own life, what are you leaving?
Yeah.
You're leaving something behind.
A legacy of pain.
A legacy of pain and suffering.
Yeah.
You might take away that pain for you for that moment, and you're gone. But it takes a hell of a person to stand up and fight and keep fighting to survive. I don't know how to explain it.
That's the truth, yeah.
It's too easy to, and I've been there, man.
Yeah.
I've been there a couple times, and it would have been easy. And I'm glad that I'm still here. Yeah, if I'd have went other ways about it, I probably wouldn't be here. But I would just say, never give up. Just don't give up. Please don't give up.
Yeah, I've seen that. I talk about him often, but my best friend from my unit, Carter Chick, he took his own life a few years ago.
Sorry.
And but I use that now as my drive to light within this work. That's my edge. That's what keeps the fires burning. Sure. I tell people all the time, you're not going to beat me on my passion.
Sure.
Because that man gave me my passion.
Sure.
He was a great leader, served in the Marine Corps, went to Somalia, did Mogadishu, and then served in the Army, did 4 or 5 tours of Iraq. My tour was his last tour. And I'm struck by how much pain I saw him in when I got back. And, the seemingly old warrior, the man that I had seen as the war fighter, this strong symbol of strength, Texan strength, the true Texan, one of the most true Texans I've ever met. And just a guy, an old ball coach, guy you would not give any trouble to. Truly.
Especially a Marine.
Yeah. Just a tough, hard guy. And, I remember his leadership and that fact that he would always take the flak for his men under him. Always. That was his style. It didn't matter if a guy was doing something stupid. He would still, that was my fault. I told him to do that or whatever. Just wouldn't care. And as a result, he was, he picked up rank very slowly, very slowly.
Yeah.
But he was an incredible man, incredible leader. And I remember, some of those last moments and seeing how much pain he was in, and all the alcohol consumption, and the constant, he was taking like 110, 115 pills a day under his prescription load. I've got this one image of him with his pill bottle stacked in front of him. It's been out there for a while, but I remember his just thinking to myself, like, he's not going to make it. We had these conversations weekly, where he was in pain constantly, and I tried, but at the end of the day, I knew he was committed to it, and that pain that I saw was constant. You see that a lot with the Vietnam veterans, and losing that armor, right? Losing that shell, losing that purpose, coming back. And not only that, and then getting, spit on and yelled at. So I understand when I hear those statistics, why they are where they are with you guys. Because not only did you struggle, but then you got treated terribly when you came back within that struggle. It's already hard having to do what you had to do. So I just say all that to say that I appreciate you for sticking around.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that.
Because we need these stories. And without you staying here, Carter Chick, if he hadn't told this story of the Veterans Project, I wouldn't know all that he went through. I would have no idea.
Right.
I wouldn't know about that, little girl that he had to take out in Somalia and still suffers from that because she pointed a gun at his Marines. I wouldn't know about the struggles that he had. But because he told his story, he left a legacy. And, that part of that legacy became painful. But I just, I wish I could scream out to the guys like you did, here, don't do it. But
you are.
Yeah.
But you are, really. You are. What you're doing right now, you're screaming out right now. Mm-hmm. Because you're interviewing people, You
guys teach the lessons.
But I mean, you're.
Yeah. Well, thank you.
That's it.
Yeah.
Well, I appreciate what you're doing.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that. Yeah, for me, it's such an honor to sit down with you guys and talk to you guys. I was always taught that from a very young age, by my dad. Like, show all those guys the respect in the world. They got treated terribly. Always shake their hands. Always thank them and mean it. Mean it when you thank them, And so that has a sense that's a massive sense of purpose for me. But, Johnny, I've known you for a while now. We've been Facebook buddies.
Yeah, right.
I finally made my way out here. It's like 30 minutes away from my house. I didn't realize how close you were, but it's, long time friends now. Cool. And I just want to say that I appreciate you, and I appreciate you coming on the podcast and speaking to me honestly.
Thank you for having me. Thank you for telling my story.
Yeah, well, I appreciate you telling it. So this has been another episode of the Veterans Project podcast. Johnny Hubbs, door gunner, Vietnam. And what's the name of the film again? It's Stack Deck, right?
Stack Deck, Journey of a Sky Trooper.
Journey of a Sky Trooper. And I'm going to provide a link to that in the podcast description so people can see that too, because that was a powerfully done film. My buddy Jesse Phillips, who's one of my best friends, and I actually just had him on the podcast a couple months ago.
Cool.
All those guys are awesome. So we'll leave a link to that. But listen to this podcast and enjoy the words of a Vietnam door gunner, who did struggle, who did have a tough time coming back, and who has made it through that and is now accomplishing great things for us now. So we appreciate you, Johnny. Thank you for coming on.
You. Appreciate it, Ab.
Yeah. And don't forget, our legacies are the mission.
This has been the Veterans Project Podcast with our founder, Tim Kay. Check us out at www.thevetsproject.com, on Instagram at The Veterans Project, Facebook, The Veterans Project, and Twitter at Project_Veteran. Thanks for listening, and don't forget, our legacies are the mission.